So tip 15 is personalize your invitations to connect. So I am a huge believer that on LinkedIn, you should not be connecting to every single person who has red blood going through their veins and who breathes air. I think there needs to be some strategy. Now, for years, I taught what I call the coffee, meal, or beer rule. I did not link to anybody on LinkedIn who I did not already know at some level, meaning I had had a cup of coffee with them, I'd had lunch, maybe we'd had been at happy hour together, or maybe I'd had an email exchange or a phone call, or nowadays you'd call it like a Zoom call or something. I didn't believe that just connecting to everyone mattered, because a toy shop owner in Topeka, Kansas might be an awesome person, but it doesn't really overlap very much with my business. However, I do have exceptions to that rule. So if it's a HR director or a meeting planner who reaches out to me, I'll accept those, because those are the types of people I do business with. And I'm not stupid. I'm not going to ignore people who I totally see that connection. However, if I meet somebody at a networking event or something else at a conference, and I decide, wow, we should be connected on LinkedIn because there's a real reason to connect, I don't just click the send a thing, because LinkedIn sends them a thing that just says, I think we should be connected in our network, or whatever it says. You need to personalize that and say, dear Janet, it was such a pleasure to meet you at the such and such association cocktail party. I really enjoyed our conversation about your son and his soccer tournament. Best of luck as he's looking at college recruitment. I think we should be connected on LinkedIn. I hope we can keep in touch, Tom. If you open up that, you are much more likely to click accept than if just some stranger sends you, I think we should be connected. Now, I'm guilty of it. It's harder to do on your phone. The way LinkedIn is set up with their phone app, when you hit connect, it just sends. It doesn't always give you that option. So I have tried to connect to people who I barely know, who I've met, or who might be a meeting planner, where I've just sent the standard and they accept it. But when I do it from my computer and I actually add that paragraph, there's much more of a connection.
Right, but there is a setting on the mobile when you're at a conference that you can connect to people nearby and go ahead and send the connections while you're at that conference. But one of the things is, on behalf of the Concordia University, is I encourage every student, even if you're not in the same department, to connect to your classmates. It's really important because you don't know where they're going to be 2, 5, 10, 15 years later.
Yeah, and I think obviously, especially if you're at a university like Concordia, it is a family. And so those aren't really strangers, even if you haven't hung out with them. But I think in the world, like I worked for Wells Fargo 15 years ago, and I recently got a connection that said, hey, we both used to work at Wells Fargo. We should connect. Well, Wells Fargo had tens of thousands of employees. I need to know a little more. I want to have a conversation with people. So I think you have to figure out your own policy and what works for you, but also make it more personal, saying, hey, we both worked at a gargantuan company a decade and a half ago, to me isn't enough of a connection. But if he had written, oh my gosh, I see we worked, we both know these people, and we both, are amateurs at stand-up comedy, I think we should connect, I would have been more likely to accept that than just a plain one.
Yeah, and as I said, in groups, if you're following the same people that you would like to be mentored by, and sometimes mentorship is just reading their blog for a year, you can go ahead and say, I've been reading your blog. I really enjoyed these 3 posts. I would like to connect because we share the same group.
And if somebody listened to my podcast for a year and sent me that type of note, even if we didn't know each other, I really love your podcast. I've learned a lot from it. I've been listening to it. I feel like I know you. Can we be connected? I wouldn't just say yes. I'd say yes, and let's get on the phone.